Hey yo, welcome to the latest edition of Listen to Me. Welcome back to Listen to Me. Listen to Me, volume 62. And let me tell you something right now. This is the bad guy edition of Listen to Me. Rest in peace to my friend Scott Hall, the bad guy. We know you're up there looking down. Was a friend of mine. Let's get on to business. Now, today is Thursday, the 21st of April, 2022. And this Saturday, in the United Kingdom in London, in Wembley Stadium, 94,000 people will be in attendance to see the World Heavyweight Boxing Championship contest between the champion, Tyson Fury, 31-0, 22 knockouts, 1 draw, being challenged by Dillian Whyte, who's been the number one contender for quite some time, 28-2, 19 KOs. And let me tell you something right now, everybody's favorite boxing shaman, yours truly, the Dream. I've been anticipating this fight for quite some time. Anybody that knows the Dream knows that I've been anticipating this fight for quite some time. And anybody that knows your favorite boxing shaman, the Dream, knows that Dillian Whyte is definitely my favorite heavyweight boxing today. And I'll tell you why. He's 28-2, all right? He's got 19 knockouts. His 2 losses, one to Anthony Joshua early on in his career, and the second was to Alexander Povetkin a few years ago, which he avenged in an immediate rematch by way of knockout. By way of knockout. Now, let's go further into the resume of Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte, okay? For his 2 losses, one which he has avenged to Alexander Povetkin, and he basically retired Alexander Povetkin because after Alexander Povetkin was knocked out by Dillian Whyte, a few months ago, Alexander Povetkin announced his retirement from professional boxing. Alexander Povetkin, who was a WBA regular champion in his time. Alexander Povetkin, who was an Olympic gold medalist as a heavyweight. Alexander Povetkin, who for the entire duration of his boxing career was in the top 10. Ranked in the top 10 for the entire duration of his career, period. That's just the way it is when it came to Alexander Povetkin. Now, who else has Dillian Whyte beat? Let's see. He beat Oscar Rivas. A guy who a lot of people don't want to jump in the ring with. Oscar Rivas, who is currently the WBC Bridgerweight champion. Okay? Dillian Whyte, he has a split decision over Derek Chisora. Very close fight. And then the subsequent rematch they had after that, Dillian Whyte knocked out Derek Chisora with a peach of a punch, a beautiful left hook, put him out, put him down, and that was the end of the fight. Dillian Whyte also beat top 10 contender and former WBO heavyweight champion of the world, Joseph Parker. He beat him, and he floored him twice in that fight, and, he beat the brakes off of Joseph Parker. Let's be real. He knocked out Lucas Brown. Knocked him out. Stopped that guy. Former WBA regular champion in his own right, Lucas Brown. Holds a unanimous, Dillian Whyte also holds a unanimous decision over Robert Helenius. Robert Helenius, who is still ranked within the top 10 of some sanctioning bodies. He holds a WBA trinket title. I believe it's the WBA gold belt at heavyweight, which can be used as a segue to challenge for the full-fledged WBA Super, World Heavyweight Championship, which is the real WBA Heavyweight Championship, the one that you can unify with that of another sanctioning body. The one that Anthony Joshua held, that is now held by Alexander Usyk. So this fight, is for the WBC and the Ring Magazine and the lineal heavyweight championship of the world, okay? But, Dillian Whyte's resume, it speaks for itself. It really does. He sets himself apart with who he's beaten and who he's been in the ring with. And he did get beat by AJ early on in his career. And AJ, in AJ's very next fight, became the IBF World Heavyweight Champion. He beat Charles Martin. Dillian Whyte proceeded to travel a very difficult road of beating top 10 contenders. Okay? He beat David Allen, who was a UK sweetheart. He beat the brakes off of that guy. Again, as I repeat, he beat Robert Helenius. He beat Lucas Brown. He beat Joseph Parker. He beat Derek Chisora twice. Now, moving over to the Tyson Fury side, his resume, he's 31-0. Okay? He has one draw with Deontay Wilder in their 3 fights, a very controversial draw. Many people feel Tyson Fury did enough to win all 3 of the fights that he had with Deontay Wilder. Many people feel Tyson Fury should be 3-0. Having said that, having that given, the fact of the matter remains that, it's 2 wins and 1 draw. The first fight went the distance and was considered a draw. Now, there were 2 knockdowns in that first fight that Deontay Wilder scored on Tyson Fury, and I feel those were the only 2 rounds that Deontay Wilder won of that first fight. Maybe he won one more, but I really doubt it. I really, truly, even looking through rose-tinted lenses and attempting to be, err on the side of, giving Deontay Wilder home field advantage, because the fight did take place in the United States. I believe it was the Staples Center the first time. It was solely a PBC show. At the time of the first fight between Wilder and Fury, Fury was not represented in the United States of America by Top Rank or Bob Arum, so he really didn't have any protection whatsoever. So even considering the home field advantage, I didn't see any more than the 2 rounds that Deontay Wilder knocked down Tyson Fury in the first fight that, Deontay Wilder won. However, he was awarded a draw in that fight, but Tyson Fury beat the brakes off of that guy in the next 2 fights he had with that guy, Deontay Wilder. But, truth be told, outside of knocking Deontay Wilder out twice, the first time when, Mark Breland threw in the towel, in the corner of Deontay Wilder and gave Tyson Fury the stoppage, and the second time, Tyson Fury just knocked out Deontay Wilder. He bounced him off the canvas. He did have to pick himself up off the canvas twice in 1 round, and he was very close to being stopped himself, very close to being a 10 count in that round when Tyson Fury was knocked down twice in their 3rd fight, in their last fight a couple months ago. However, Tyson Fury did get up, he did beat the count, he did beat the brakes off of Deontay Wilder, and he stopped him, and he knocked him out cold. Tyson Fury was standing above him after a big flurry of punches with his hands above his head, and Deontay Wilder was flat on his back. And he was in need of medical attention. That's just the way the fight went down. And I actually liked the way Wilder handled losing the 3rd fight as opposed to the way he handled losing the 2nd fight, where he was making excuses with the glove gate and all this bullshit, whatever, poisoning of his water and a bunch of crap. After the 3rd fight, Deontay Wilder basically said, Tyson Fury beat me. What can I do? The better man won that night. I'll always be a warrior, and he'll always be a warrior too. Something to that nature is what Deontay Wilder, gave post Fury Wilder 3. So instead of being completely asinine and foolish like after the 2nd fight, he was rather gracious in defeat the 3rd fight, which was better than he was the 2nd fight. However, Tyson Fury's resume, he is 31-0. He has 22 knockouts, but all right, he beat Derek Chisora twice. He beat him in the first fight very early on, almost 10 years ago in the first fight, and it was a unanimous decision. The 2nd fight was a referee stoppage. Tyson Fury beat Vlad Klitschko. He outboxed him from pillar to post. He clearly outboxed him. Was the fight the most entertaining fight in the history of heavyweight boxing and heavyweight title fights? No. Was it the most memorable heavyweight title fight? No. And that's one of the reasons that Tyson Fury gets some criticism from the UK fans, from fans overall, and why he's maybe not as beloved as Anthony Joshua was when he was the world heavyweight champion. Because let's face it, the Anthony Joshua-Vladimir Klitschko fight was a lot more exciting than the Tyson Fury-Vladimir Klitschko fight. That's just the way it is. When Joshua fought Klitschko, it was a close battle. Both men had to pick themselves up off the canvas, and the night ended with Anthony Joshua getting the stoppage. The Tyson Fury-Vladimir Klitschko fight was basically one-sided boxing, and at no point was anyone really at risk of being stopped. That's just the way the fight went down. But during the AJ versus Klitschko fight, both guys were at risk of, the fight was, could have went either way, and the referee, AJ was even at risk of being stopped. He really was. After Klitschko picked himself up off the canvas early on, I think it was the 4th round or the 5th, but during that time, he really had AJ's number, and AJ was, figuring it out, and he did figure it out, and he came back and he won the fight. He stopped him late, which was great. However, back to Tyson Fury, his resume is fairly thin. Now, he beat Otto Verlin, who's maybe a top 20 heavyweight at this point, maybe. He looks bang average every time I've ever seen him, other than the Tyson Fury fight, and getting the cut on Tyson Fury. And listen, they afforded Tyson Fury some extra rope, if you will, to hang himself in that fight. They didn't call it because he was the heavyweight champion of the world, and they were, his next fight was against Deontay Wilder. That was before the second Wilder fight, so that's very important to remember that. So that's one of the reasons that they let that cut go. A lot of other times that fight would have been stopped. That cut's on someone else in a different scenario, that fight is stopped. But because it was Tyson Fury, they gave him a little bit of extra leeway. And he was able to, secure a points decision. Now, he did knock out Steve Cunningham, who was a cruiserweight, but he had a cruiserweight champion and a cruiserweight, but he's a small guy. He wasn't really a heavyweight. And Steve Cunningham actually floored Tyson Fury. He did stop Christian Hammer, and he beat McDermott in the TKO'd him in the rematch. But in the first fight, did Tyson Fury win? He got the decision, but did he win? Now, don't give me Francisco Pianetta or Tom Schwartz or Safari or any of that, because Robert Helenius, better than all those guys. Period. Better than all those guys. And what happened when Dillian Whyte fought him? He beat him. Lucas Brown, better than Tom Schwartz. Better than Safari, better than Pianetta. And what happened when Dillian Whyte fought? Lucas Brown stopped him. So let's get real here. Tyson Fury's resume is pretty thin outside of, the Derek Chisora fights early on, and the Vladimir Klitschko fight, and the two Deontay Wilder fights. Other than that, Tyson Fury's resume is pretty thin. Dillian Whyte has been tested, and he's passed the tests. They've been difficult tests. And yes, he has lost twice, but he responded from those losses. He rebounded from those losses. He avenged one of those losses, and he's had nothing in his sights but a World Heavyweight Championship. And this will be his first World Heavyweight Championship title fight. That's right, his first shot at an actual World Championship. Not an interim belt, not a status of #1 contender, no regular bullshit, no. A real World Heavyweight Championship, coupled with the Ring Magazine and lineal titles. Dillian Whyte, in my opinion, is going to knock out Tyson Fury. He will stop him. I believe it's going to be somewhere between the second and third quarter. I believe it's going to be between the 6th or 7th round, maybe the 8th round. But I believe 6 or 7 is really where you're going to see Dillian Whyte get it done. I believe he's going to stop Tyson Fury. Now, I want to touch on something quickly before we close. That is the fact that 94,000 people will be in attendance. This is going to be a tremendous pay-per-view. Projections in the United States of America estimated 500,000 pay-per-view buys. Projections so far. So, before anything is even purchased, the numbers are projected to be about 500,000. Let's see what happens. But let's talk about who's not a pay-per-view star. Let's talk about who's announced he's leaving Mayweather Promotions. And Leonard Smellerby, as some of my friends like to call him, as I believe he's properly referenced as. Leonard Smellerby, the guy's a horrible manager, horrible promoter. I don't like Mayweather as promoter. Incredible fighter, one of the greatest of all time. No question about it. Terrible promoter. Tank Davis wants to leave. Why? Because he's not a pay-per-view star. They could tell you he's a pay-per-view star all day. He's not a pay-per-view star. His last pay-per-view numbers, the early numbers, were something like 50,000 buys. Okay? Now, that might have been low, but just going off the early numbers, okay? Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo Alvarez this past year, the same year as Isaac Cruz and Gervonta Davis, Tank Davis were on pay-per-view the same year. Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo Alvarez fought in front of 73,126 people in attendance. The indoor attendance record for boxing in the United States of America. The indoor attendance record for boxing in the United States of America. Approximately 23,126 more people viewed that fight in-house than actually bought the pay-per-view overall for Tank Davis and Isaac Cruz. That's not a pay-per-view star. Let's just say that you go with the higher numbers, the later numbers, between 100 and 150,000 pay-per-view buys, which is unsubstantiated, but that's the numbers that, Leonard Smellerby has been hinting at after the early numbers were released. In response, he said it was between 100 and 200,000 or something like that. So let's average it out at 150,000, okay? The Billy Joe Saunders-Canelo fight, which was on DAZN, a shitty platform that sucks, man. According to some people, the PBC, Leonard Ellerby, the people that are stuck on this antiquated pay-per-view model that's just outdated and, like a dinosaur at this point. There was 400,000 new subscribers. 400,000 new subscribers the month of Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo Alvarez. On top of them setting the indoor attendance record. You want to take a look at Canelo's last fight? Canelo versus Plant, a PBC production. Similar company, same company basically that Tank Davis was just fighting under. 800,000 pay-per-view buys. Why? Because Canelo Alvarez is a pay-per-view star. So Leonard Smellerby and Mayweather promotions, they can't build shit. They can't build a pay-per-view star, and that's why Tank Davis wants out. Tank Davis never fought in front of 94,000 people in the United Kingdom. Guess what? This weekend, 94,000 people, Wembley Stadium. Approximated so far, 500,000 projected pay-per-view buys. Canelo Alvarez, last pay-per-view, 800,000 pay-per-view buys. That's why Tank Davis is leaving Leonard Smellerby and Mayweather promotions, because that shit sucks. So until we meet again, my friends, it's been your pleasure and not mine. Ha ha! My pleasure as well. Now, before I close, remember, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. This is part of the reason that you haven't seen The Dream live and in living color, giving you the listen to me in quite some time. My Cash App, everybody's favorite boxing shaman's Cash App, will be in the description box. I repeat, everybody's favorite boxing shaman's Cash App will be in the description box. If you want to continue seeing these videos, throw something in there. Look, you don't got to give me $1,000. You don't got to give me $100. Throw $5 in the hat. Throw $1 in the hat. Throw $2 in the hat. Every little bit counts, and everything counts in large amounts. And as we pile up the pennies, they become mountains of cash, and we can all be happy and rich. It actually means my time matters, and it means it matters to you. It means something to you, and that means the world to me. So until we meet again, my friends, peace!